Welcome back to We Married the Family, the place for daughter-in-laws and couples to explore family relations. Today's episode topic has been sent in by one of you on Instagram, asking to hear more about what to do when in-laws are criticizing the daughter-in-law, both subtly and openly, and as a result weakening her relationship with her husband. This is a great topic to cover because it's one of the most common issues that a daughter-in-law struggles with, the criticism part anyway. There isn't any daughter-in-law I know of who has not had criticism from her in-laws. But the impact that this has on her relationship with her husband can go in different directions. Being criticized is never a good feeling, but when it's your in-laws, when it's regular, and especially when it's in front of others, it can be really hurtful and have a lifelong impact. In the moment, you might feel ashamed, hurt, upset, or angry, and in the long run, it can lead to a buildup of resentment and low self-worth. You might have anxiety about making a mistake or ruminate over the scenario that just happened for months afterwards. Or you might have constant thoughts about not being good enough. So why is this so common? And what can you do to make a change? Well, I believe a big part of this comes down to the way that in-laws view a daughter-in-law. I've done a previous episode on the mistreatment of daughter-in-laws due to the hierarchical family system that operates in most of our households, which puts the daughter-in-law at the bottom, making her quote-unquote less deserving of love and more likely to be devalued and excluded. With some in-laws, you might think that they've got nothing else better to do in the day than to watch, judge and criticize their daughter-in-law. It honestly feels like such a trap to have you living there so that they can reign over you. Through their criticisms of you, they feel more powerful and more superior. Any criticism that's coming from this place isn't constructive. It's intentional fault finding and nitpicking with malicious intent. Obviously, this is on the very unhealthy end of the spectrum, but it is more common than you might think. When you come into the family, you start to learn how the family operates, what their habits and lifestyle are like, how they do their laundry, what are their meal times like, all of the day-to-day stuff, which will be a new way to you because every family operates differently. But if your in-laws want you to do things their way, they want you to change or even forget what you've learned, they might use criticism as a way to enforce those changes, which is the completely unhelpful way to go about creating change. As one of my favorites, Dr. Wayne Dyer, said, transformative change begins with compassion and understanding, not condemnation. Some of the criticisms you hear might be more subtle comments like, oh, we never use that product in this house, or indirect comments where you both know the person is referring to you without actually looking at you or talking to you. They might be speaking over you and speaking to your husband whilst you're in the room and say something like, I really don't like when the clothes are left on the line for that long. Or it could be more overt and open and harsh, like saying to you directly, didn't anyone teach you how to cook? As a daughter-in-law, you have your own ways. You're human and you will make mistakes. In-laws sometimes forget these things and have a hard time being open to differences and accepting differences. So your way isn't necessarily wrong, it's just not what they're used to. That doesn't give them any right to speak to you like that, but it's a perspective on what might be happening. As parents, particularly mothers, who've raised their own children in a particular way and run their homes in their own particular way, their inner critic will come out when they see you doing things differently. This is also more of an insight into how they might speak to themselves. If your mother-in-law is always nitpicking and unhappy with you, can you imagine what it might be like in her own headspace when it comes to herself? Maybe she's lived her life trying to meet her own impossible expectations or even other people's impossible expectations. Learning that what someone else does and what they say is more about them than about you is one of the biggest and most important things to learn. It will honestly change your whole approach to the criticisms that you face because you stop personalizing everything they say, and that gives their words less power over you. You can start to see people for who they are instead of bending to all their rules and expectations out of fear. Sometimes their criticisms are done maliciously. Sometimes it could be because they actually don't know how to communicate any better. That's not an excuse or a justification, it's a fact. In most of our households, emotional intelligence is quite poor, and emotional vocabulary isn't that great. The indirect comments, passive-aggressive behavior like silent treatment, gossiping, complaining, playing the victim, they're all unhealthy ways of communicating. There's really little ownership and accountability over their own emotions and internal processes, and a real disconnection between what is said and what is meant, and what is said and what is felt. Communication like this can be tactical to intentionally manipulate you and put you down, or it's the only way that they've learned how to communicate. As a daughter-in-law, it can leave you feeling fearful, anxious, confused, where you're never sure what the right thing is to do or say, where you develop a pattern of always reading between the lines and second-guessing people's words. It's not a good place to be at all, and it takes so much mental and emotional energy. Sometimes the criticism is more about the other person's own anxieties. For example, more overt, direct criticisms like saying to you that you're so selfish or you don't know how to manage the house. There's something a lot deeper that's actually about the person's own expectations of themselves and the things that they struggle with. If a mother-in-law has always put the family first, sacrificed herself, as most women do, and kept herself busy with household duties, then she might have built up resentment that she didn't get to relax like you do. She didn't work outside the house, she wasn't supported to make time for herself. So some of this could very likely be directed towards you, another woman who is possibly making different choices, living a bit happier and a bit of an easier, more choiceful life. Again, it's less about you and more about the other person. When these criticisms are happening in front of others or even in front of your partner, they can be shaming and humiliating. It's an absolutely awful thing to experience, and some daughters-in-law experience this on a frequent basis. Often there's little support for her in the situation when it happens, which can make her feel really alone and isolated. After all, the family has a shared belief system. It's likely that they'll agree with the comments rather than stepping in or challenging them. And in some families, it can feel safer and easier to stay silent than to speak out. But this is actually a form of enabling, which maintains unhealthy patterns. So if we want change within the family, it is the responsibility of whoever is present to be a positive influence towards better relationships, rather than letting these things slide or adding to the issue. Your in-laws might or might not have a big influence on your partner and how he views you or feels towards you, but they are his parents and he has a loyalty to them, some more than others. So when they criticize you in front of him, this can send messages to him like, you picked the wrong girl, look how she doesn't fit in, she's not right for us and for this family, you need to get her to change. And he's going to feel a lot of pressure if he's easily swayed by them and if he's more loyal to them than to you. If he's siding with his parents, or even criticizing you along with his parents, it's going to hurt your marital relationship big time. I've worked with many women who feel unsupported by their husbands when it comes to situations like this. Men can feel disempowered in front of their own parents. They can also feel fearful and small, especially if they have also experienced emotional abuse or neglect. But you both need to address this, and he needs to explore what's going on for him. What stops him from standing up for you? Can he find his own strength and courage? He will need to at some point, otherwise the marriage is going to suffer. You might start feeling more distant, feeling betrayed, disappointed. And these are the things that are going to weaken the relationship. When he doesn't support you, when he sides with his parents, when there's division instead of togetherness. The Gottmans identify the importance of something they call a united front when it comes to tackling issues as a couple. If your husband is agreeing or siding with his parents, he is now more like the critical parent himself, rather than being a loving partner to you. And there's less unity between you both because he hasn't got your back. So the issue here then becomes less about the in-laws and more about family loyalties and boundaries. What you both need to do is to establish a solid and clear couple identity, a sense of togetherness where you both trust one another, you can rely on one another for support, you make decisions together and approach things as a unit. It's not husband against wife or vice versa, it's both of you dealing with whatever issue is presented to you. That's going to go a long way in strengthening your marriage. So think about how you can both support each other when there is increased tension in the family or in the home. If he sees you being criticized, what can he do differently? On a little side note, if your husband does want to support you, you have to also let him. A lot of daughter-in-laws actually stop their husbands from addressing things with their in-laws because they don't want their in-laws to know that they're unhappy or that they've said something to their son about them. So this is about her own discomfort and avoidance of conflict. If you don't want your husband to speak for you, then where does that leave you both? He can feel frustrated and you're still receiving criticism. That's either something then that you'll have to manage and deal with in a different way, or you can test the waters and learn to take ownership for your own feelings and actions too. If you think it's going to make things worse, see what happens. You could stay in the loop that you're in, or you could just experiment. Either way, it's your choice and whatever you both agree as a couple. Your own self esteem plays a big part when it comes to dealing with criticism. It's definitely something that needs your attention and your care. If you already had low self esteem before marriage, maybe you knew or you didn't know, then experiences with critical in laws will intensify that. And you'll be more likely to experience general feedback and comments in a negative way as well. The way I see self esteem is like a protective barrier around you. For some people, it's really solid. For others, it might be more permeable or it might have holes in it. And criticisms are like arrows that are coming from other people. If your self esteem is low, then those arrows are going to hurt more. If your self esteem is high, they might just bounce straight off. But those arrows can also damage self esteem. Being faced with constant criticism makes it more difficult to keep yourself strong and resilient. It takes a lot of effort and energy to maintain a positive outlook and emotional state when you're in this kind of environment. For many daughter-in-laws, the criticisms take a toll and can be really hard to come back from. A lot of them lose their positivity, their joy, and their confidence, and instead they become anxious, hyper-aware, and withdrawn and self-critical. If your self-esteem is low and you're feeling resentful, you dislike your in-laws, then even if they're giving you advice or direction from a good place, you'll take those comments in a different way because you're in a self-protective and maybe defensive stance. It's important to be reflective here and ask yourself, are they fair and justified in what they said? Is there something helpful in what they've said? Were they actually trying to help? You'll be able to answer these questions more easily the more you know the other person and the more self-aware you are, and the more honest you can be with yourself. Unless the other person is really malicious and mean, they're not always out to get you. I work with a lot of empathic women who are sensitive and have a real beauty in their gentleness, but their sensitivity becomes a double-edged sword and can start working against them. In situations like being in a home with people who are critical, these women's sensitivity becomes heightened to the point of paralysis and loss of identity. Their sensitivity to others' emotions makes them hypervigilant and anxious. What's missing here is the development of traits and qualities that are going to balance their sensitivity. If you're in this space, you need to go on a journey of learning how and when to use your gifts and work on what's missing within yourself. Because you can be a sensitive and empathic woman and have good self-esteem. I'd actually say that if you are a sensitive and empathic woman, you need to make sure that you're maintaining your self-esteem. Otherwise, you are going to get hurt. People are going to try and control you and take advantage of all your niceties. But you don't have to work against your nature to deal with these in-law issues. It might feel more challenging initially, but it's a chance for you to develop the parts of you that are less developed than your sensitivity. Like being able to advocate for yourself, being able to detach your self-worth from other people's opinions of you, being able to assert yourself in a healthy way, being able to live more authentically without feeling anxious and guilty for your choices. All of this takes effort and it takes practice. When living in these critical environments, some women can become quite hard externally to protect themselves, which is really sad because she ends up becoming somebody who she's not. And you might need to protect yourself for a period of time, but you also really need to come back to yourself and mellow back into what your own nature is. If your environment is really harmful and there is abuse happening, then obviously you're going to want to protect yourself in whatever way you can. And as well as working on yourself, you'll need to really think about what you want for your future, because no one should get used to living in an abusive home. Generally, if the people that you're dealing with are receptive, they're not abusive or narcissistic, you'll be able to make some positive changes by being more clear, assertive, and boundaried. Maybe you can try and be a bit more honest, or try and speak with both fearlessness and kindness, with strength and with humility. If you're just starting out with this, you can practice by writing words and phrases that you feel would be helpful next time someone makes a particular criticism. If you've been in a situation where you've been criticized and then later on thought, I wish I'd said XYZ in the moment, but the words just didn't come to you, That's okay. Just learn from it. Write down what you wish you would have said. Your words just need practice and encouragement to come out when you need them. So practice speaking these words and phrases out loud so you become more familiar and comfortable with them. This way, they'll be easier to recall and speak when you're in a difficult situation next time. Working on your anxiety and making changes physiologically is also going to help because your voice is connected to your breath, and anxiety tightens your chest and your throat. So you might start practicing breathing exercises, pausing during conversations, changing the pace of your speech so that you have more calm and more clarity. I will say that not every criticism needs a response. There's a lot of power and strength in choosing silence when it's from a place of quiet confidence. If you've reflected on some things that have been pointed out to you and you feel like, okay, maybe they've got a point, or, I haven't been eating the best, or I actually would like to be better at not letting things pile up around the house, then you might want to change those things. Relationships are our biggest resource for improvement because they can really show us what we might be avoiding. Obviously, it's not easy to face that, but it can make a difference when you do. You can determine your own self-worth when you do this, because if you're not doing the things in the way that you'd like to, that is going to affect how you see yourself. But when you make those changes and you start to feel better about yourself, you're going to feel stronger against others' criticisms because you're not using their perception of you as a measure of your worth, but you're determining your own worth for yourself. When you know yourself and like yourself enough, then you're not going to take on others' opinions about you in the same way. It's going to give you a lot more contentment and self-assurance. Being criticized by your in-laws doesn't have to have a completely negative impact on your marriage either. If those challenging situations are faced with a shared understanding, better boundaries, and strong communication, then they can actually strengthen your relationship rather than dividing it. It's all about approaching them as a team, as a united front. If you've benefited from today's episode, do like, comment, share, and subscribe. If you've been affected by anything discussed in today's episode and you'd like to work together, you can join my daughter-in-law's membership or book in for one-to-one or couples therapy with myself or another therapist.